The corridor smelled like lemon oil and old roses, polish on the marble, perfume trapped in velvet drapes, history pressed into the stones so deeply the air itself seemed to remember. I had been walking for nearly an hour, carrying a stack of ledgers that felt heavier with every step, pretending the ache in my shoulders was merely the weight of duty and not the weight of being invisible. Invisible people survive palaces. You learn when to lower your eyes, when to stop breathing too loudly, when to flatten yourself against the wall so a noble's sleeves don't brush you and give them reason to notice you exist. You learn the difference between go away and go away politely, and you learn it fast. I rounded the last corner toward the registrar's office, already rehearsing my apology for being late, my mind drifting the way it always did when exhaustion pried the discipline from my hands. The palace was quiet at this hour, too early for feasts, too late for morning audiences. A strange in-between where servants moved like ghosts and the chandeliers seemed to glow for no one. And that was when my mind, traitorous and half asleep, wandered to the one thing the whole kingdom talked about in a whisper, the queen. I'd seen her from a distance twice, once on the balcony during the harvest blessing, once in the Hall of Banners when she passed like a comet through orbiting courtiers. She had not looked real, not like a person who ate bread and had to tie her shoes. She looked like someone sculpted from light and dared the world to blink. My lips moved before my sense caught up. "Queen is so beautiful," I muttered, barely louder than a sigh, but I didn't know the queen was standing behind me. The words were nonsense, two thoughts colliding midair. The kind of foolishness you speak to yourself when you think you're alone, but the corridor was not empty. A soft sound came from behind me. Not a gasp, not outrage, a laugh. It was quiet, controlled, like someone used to keeping their amusement locked behind their teeth. Every hair on my arms rose. I turned so slowly the ledgers creaked in my grip. She was there, not at the far end of the corridor, not framed by a doorway or attended by trumpets and guards. Right behind me, so close I could see the fine embroidery of her cloak. Tiny silver vines stitched into dark fabric, a constellation caught in thread. Her crown was smaller than the portrait suggested, more like a ring of hammered moonlight than a tower of jewels. Her face, yes, she was beautiful, unfairly so, but it was her eyes that made my knees want to fold. They were calm, not cold, not warm, assessing. As if I were a document she'd been asked to approve, my mouth opened. Nothing came out. My body remembered every rule of palace speech at once and tripped over them all. I dropped into a bow so deep the ledgers slid and I nearly lost them. "Your Majesty, I didn't." "I gathered as much," she said, still composed, though the corners of her mouth threatened to betray her. "Stand up." I stood up too fast. My forehead nearly collided with her shoulder. I stepped back so abruptly my heels skidded on the marble. A guard should have been with her. A lady in waiting. Someone to make sense of her presence, but there was no one, only the two of us and the long corridor stretching away like a tunnel. I swallowed. "I meant no disrespect." "I didn't hear disrespect," she said. "I heard honesty." Honesty was the most dangerous word in the palace. I tightened my grip on the ledgers until my fingers hurt. "It was absent-mindedness, Majesty. I speak to myself when I'm tired. And when you're tired, you tell yourself the queen is beautiful." The heat rushed to my face so fiercely I thought the marble beneath my feet might melt. It was a stray thought, I managed. A foolish one. "Foolish thoughts are common," she said. "Foolish words less so. Most people practice theirs." Her gaze flicked to the ledgers. "Where are you going?" "The registrar," I said automatically. "Quarter accounts, shipment tallies." "And your name?" My name felt too small to bring into the same air as hers. Still, I gave it. She repeated it softly, tasting it like she might taste a foreign spice. Then she looked past my shoulder, down the corridor I just walked. "You said something else," she murmured. My stomach dropped. I had forgotten the second half of my mutter, the part that made it sound as though I'd known she was behind me. "No, Majesty," I blurted. "I mean, I didn't know, I swear it." I believe you," she said, and something in her tone made my knees go weak. "That's the problem. The problem." She moved a step closer. Not threatening, just close enough that her voice wouldn't echo. "Do you know why I'm standing in a corridor at this hour without an escort?" she asked. My mind sprinted through possibilities and found only death, tests, traps, court games that ended with someone's reputation broken or their head separated from their body. "No, Majesty. Because I cannot trust the people who normally stand behind me," she said. The sentence landed like a dropped plate. I stared, certain I'd misheard. She watched my face carefully, as if measuring how quickly fear turned to greed. You look like someone who won't sell a secret for a ribbon, she said. I don't, my voice cracked. I don't have ribbons. That got another brief curve of her mouth. What you have, she said, is a habit of speaking when you think no one listens. My throat went dry. I need someone, she continued, who can walk through my palace unseen. Someone who hears what people say when they assume no one important is there. My hands tightened again. Majesty, I'm a clerk. And yet you're the first person today who has spoken to me like I'm a human being, even accidentally. She tilted her head. Do you want to remain a clerk? Every sensible part of me screamed yes. Clerks lived. Clerks went home at night and argued with their neighbors and complained about the price of onions. Clerks did not become involved in whatever danger forced the queen to hide in hallways. But there was another part of me, small, stubborn, and tired of being invisible for the comfort of people who had never carried their own ledgers. I want to remain alive, I said truthfully. Her eyes softened not with pity but with understanding. Then listen carefully, she said. There is a threat inside these walls, not rumor, not paranoia, a real threat moving quietly. I have reason to believe someone plans to harm me during the Founding Day banquet. My chest tightened. Founding Day was 2 nights away. The whole nobility would be there, all the foreign envoys, hundreds of staff. Who? I whispered. If I knew I wouldn't need you, she said. I need eyes where mine cannot go, ears where my name shuts mouths. I stared at the ledgers, suddenly feeling absurd with my stack of numbers and ink. Why me? Because you were honest without trying. She paused. And because you didn't recognize me until you turned. That stung. Then I realized what she meant. I hadn't performed. I hadn't bowed and praised and polished my words because I hadn't known I had an audience. She reached into her cloak and produced a small token, plain metal, stamped with the royal seal on one side and a blank surface on the other. If anyone questions you, she said, show them this. It means you serve me directly. They won't like it, but they will obey. My fingers hovered. Majesty, if I take that, I can't untake it. No, she agreed, but you can do something with it. I thought of my mother who cleaned linens in the south wing, of my brother who wanted apprenticeship but couldn't afford the fee, of myself 15 years in the palace watching power move like weather while I carried its receipts. I took the token. It was colder than I expected. The queen nodded once as if a contract had been signed in the space between breaths. First, she said, go to the registrar as you intended. Do your duties, be normal. My laugh came out strangled. Normal is difficult at the moment. You will manage, she said. You must. If anyone suspects you are mine, you will become visible, and visible people in a palace are either celebrated or eliminated. She stepped back, letting the corridor swallow the space between us. Tonight, she continued, after the 3rd bell, go to the old music room above the eastern gallery. Alone. My heart thudded so loudly I was sure it echoed. Yes, Majesty. She turned as if to leave, then paused. And she added almost casually, try to be less absent-minded. I swallowed. I will try. She walked away, cloak whispering against stone, and when she rounded the corner, she vanished so completely it was as if she had never existed. Only the token in my palm proved I hadn't hallucinated the entire thing. I stood for a long moment, listening to my own breathing, then forced my legs to move. The registrar's office was exactly as dull as it always was. Ink-stained desks, tired clerks, the smell of wax seals and hopelessness. I delivered the ledgers with shaking hands and endured a lecture about punctuality from a man who would faint if he ever met the Queen's gaze. Then I sat at my station, opened my own book of numbers, and tried to make my mind behave. It didn't. All day I watched. I watched the way messengers moved between halls too quickly, as if carrying more than letters. I watched 2 guards argue in low voices and stop the moment a noblewoman approached. I watched a kitchen boy with a fresh bruise on his jaw and a fear in his eyes that didn't match a simple scolding. I listened, too, because I had been trained by necessity to overhear without appearing to. In the copying room, someone murmured that the Queen had been oddly absent lately. In the laundry corridor, someone whispered that new servants had been brought in last week without proper vetting. In the armory hall, a man joked too nervously about how Founding Day was a perfect night for a tragedy. It was all smoke, no flame, and yet beneath it I felt the palace shifting like a sleeping animal disturbed by a thorn. By the time the 3rd bell rang, my nerves were stretched so tight they hummed. I waited until my supervisor left, until the corridors thinned, until the servants' footsteps softened with the hour. Then I went to the eastern gallery, climbed the narrow servant stairs, and found the door to the old music room. It creaked when I pushed it open. Dust lay thick on the floor. A harp stood in the corner like a forgotten skeleton. The tall windows were curtained, leaving the room lit by a single lamp on a small table, and beside that lamp sat the queen, no crown this time, no cloak. Her hair was braided simply, and she wore a dark dress that could have belonged to any noblewoman if noblewomen ever looked this awake. On the table lay a map of the palace marked with ink. She looked up. "You came." Yes," I said, and realized how strange it was that she sounded relieved. She gestured to the chair across from her. "Sit, tell me what you heard today." So I did. I reported the rumors, the bruised kitchen boy, the nervous joke, the unvetted servants. I expected her to dismiss most of it, but she didn't. She listened with the same still attention she'd given me in the corridor, as if every detail mattered because it came from a mouth that had no reason to impress her. When I finished, she tapped the map lightly. "The servants," she murmured, "that matches my fear." "Why?" I asked before I could stop myself. Her eyes lifted. For a moment the mask of royalty slipped, and I saw something beneath it, fatigue sharp as winter. "Because someone has been altering my food," she said. My stomach lurched. "Poison? Not lethal, not yet." Her fingers tightened on the table's edge. "A slow fog, something to dull judgment, soften reflexes, blur the mind, the kind of poison that makes a ruler look incompetent without killing her." Cold crawled up my spine. "During a banquet," I whispered, "a slowed mind could be fatal," she finished, "or politically convenient." I stared at her hands, steady, controlled. "How do you know?" She hesitated. "Because I stopped eating." That stunned me more than the poison. "You stopped?" "For 6 days," she said quietly. "I live on tea I prepare myself, on fruit I peel with my own hands. It is humiliating, but it is safer." A queen starving in her own palace. Rage flared in me, sudden and bright. I had always assumed power meant safety. I had always assumed her life was a bed of velvet. Now I saw the hidden cost: constant vigilance, constant suspicion, constant loneliness. "Who would do that?" I asked, and my voice trembled with something other than fear. "There are factions," she said. "Old families who believe the throne belongs to them by bloodline, foreign interests who would prefer a pliable monarch, people who smile at me and dream of controlling me." She leaned forward slightly. "Founding day is when they will try to finish what they've begun." I swallowed hard. "What do you want me to do?" She slid a small list across the table: names, positions, wing assignments. "These are the new servants," she said. "Find out who brought them in, who signed the papers, who benefits." "I'm a clerk," I reminded her, though it sounded weaker now. "And clerks know where paper trails hide," she said. "You know which drawers stick, which signatures are real, which inks fade wrong." She was right, and I hated that she was right. I took the list. "One more thing," she added, and there was a strange softness in her voice. "When you spoke in the corridor, you said my beauty like it was an ordinary observation." Heat crept up my neck again. "Majesty," she lifted a hand. "Let it be ordinary," she said. "For 1 minute speak to me without fear." My heart hammered. I could barely breathe. "You're striking," I said carefully, because my survival instincts still had their claws in me. "But it isn't the kind of beauty people describe in songs. It's presence, like you're holding the whole room together without anyone noticing the strain." Silence filled the dusty music room. Then her shoulders almost imperceptibly relaxed. "Thank you," she said. "Most compliments feel like ropes. Yours felt like a window." I didn't know what to do with that, so I focused on the map, on the work, on anything that wouldn't make my heart explode. For the next day I became what I had always been, only sharper, a shadow with a pen. I visited the records office under the excuse of audit preparation. I asked for signatures and shipping forms. I joked with the old archivist who liked me because I never interrupted his stories, and I found the crack. 3 servant contracts had been approved by the same hand, an assistant steward named Cauldron, yet the ink of the approval was wrong, too glossy, too new, as if stamped after the fact. When I asked where Cauldron was, the archivist frowned. "Strange," he said. "He resigned this morning." "Resigned?" My mouth went dry. "Without notice." The archivist shrugged. "Left a letter, said family matters." Family matters in a palace often meant a body. I kept digging. Cauldron's resignation letter had no seal, no proper witness. And the handwriting, though neat, shook in places it shouldn't have, like someone copying someone else's hand and failing. My fingers trembled as I slid the letter back into the file. The person who brought in the servants was either gone or silenced. That night I returned to the music room and told the queen everything. She listened, then stood and paced once across the dusty floor like a caged storm. "Cauldron was loyal," she said. "He wouldn't have done this willingly." "So someone forced him," I said. "Or replaced him," she murmured. My skin prickled. "Replaced?" She stopped pacing and looked at me. "Have you ever heard of a face singer?" I blinked. A performer, a criminal art, she said. A kind of mask work so skilled it fools even people who know you. A person can become another for hours. I thought of the corridor, of how I hadn't recognized her until I turned. A new fear blossomed. If someone could wear faces, then anyone could be anyone. We need proof, I whispered. She nodded. And we need to survive founding day. On the day of the banquet, the palace transformed. Ribbons and banners flooded the halls. Torches burned with perfumed oil. Music drifted from every gallery as if the stones themselves were humming. I moved through it all with my token hidden inside my sleeve, doing my best to look like I belonged nowhere, which was, ironically, my natural talent. In the kitchens, I watched the new servants. 3 of them moved together like a single organism, quiet, efficient, eyes always scanning. They didn't laugh with the others. They didn't complain. They didn't steal tastes from the pots the way hungry people always did. They didn't feel like servants, they felt like knives. Near dusk, I slipped into the steward's corridor and found the ledger of banquet supplies. There, between flower orders and wine tallies, was the entry that made my blood run cold. A shipment of herbal tonics delivered 2 weeks prior, signed by Cauldron, herbal tonics. A polite phrase that could mean anything. I copied the supplier mark, then hurried to the palace apothecary. The apothecary, an old woman with eyes sharper than scalpels, studied the mark and made a sound like someone spitting a seed. "That's not a tonic supplier," she said. "That's a dye house." "A dye house?" My voice came out too loud. I lowered it. "Why would a dye house send tonics?" She stared at me. "Because they don't, unless someone wanted to hide the origin." "What is it?" I asked, heart pounding. She hesitated, then reached beneath her counter and produced a small vial, clear liquid, faintly cloudy. "This," she said, "is a mind duller. It's meant for animals to calm them. In small doses, it makes a person slow and pliable." My hands shook. "Can you neutralize it?" "Yes," she said, "but only if I know where it's being used." My thoughts raced. "The queen's food," the apothecary's mouth tightened. "Then she is in danger." "She knows," I said. "She stopped eating." The woman's eyes widened, and for the first time I saw fear in someone who dealt with poisons daily. "Then the next step is not fog," she said quietly. "It is fire." I left with a counter agent wrapped in cloth hidden beneath my tunic. The banquet began under a ceiling of gold and crystal. Courtiers filled the hall of banners like jeweled insects. Foreign envoys glittered with unfamiliar metals. Laughter rose in waves, practiced and loud, meant to show prosperity. At the far end of the hall, the throne waited. When the queen entered, the room shifted, every head turning as if pulled by a single string. She wore her crown now and a gown the color of midnight water, embroidered with the same silver vines I'd seen in the corridor. She was radiant. And I saw with a strange ache the way she held herself, perfect posture, controlled smile, eyes scanning constantly, like someone walking a tightrope over knives. I remained near the side doors among the servants, watching the new trio in the kitchen entryway. One of them carried a covered tray toward the dais, flanked by 2 others. My heart slammed against my ribs. That tray would reach the queen. I pushed through the servants, careful not to draw attention, and slipped into the passage that ran behind the dais, an access corridor for guards and attendants. A single guard stood there, half asleep with boredom. I showed him the token. His eyes widened. He straightened so fast I thought his spine might snap. Quiet," I hissed. "A tray is coming. Do not let it reach her." His gaze darted, uncertain. "Orders from her," I said, and the token did the rest. We positioned ourselves near the curtain gap. The tray approached silent, steady. When it was close, I stepped out and met the servant's eyes. For a heartbeat, something flickered there. Calculation, not confusion, not a servant. I grabbed the tray. The servant moved like a snake, too fast, too trained. A hand shot toward my wrist, twisting, trying to force the tray down. Pain lanced through my arm. The guard lunged, but the second and third servants were already moving, one toward the guard's throat, the other toward me. Time snapped into sharpness. I slammed the tray upward hard into the first attacker's chin. The cover flew off, revealing a silver cup and a small dish of fruit arranged too perfectly. The attacker staggered, and in that moment I saw it, the edge of something at his jaw, a seam almost invisible. A mask. The second attacker struck the guard with something small and metallic. The guard gasped and collapsed, clutching his neck. Panic roared through me, hot and loud. I did the only thing I could think of. I threw the silver cup as hard as I could down the corridor. It shattered against the stone with a ringing crack. The sound cut through the banquet music like a scream. Heads turned, murmurs rippled. The masked servant's eyes narrowed. He lunged straight for the curtain gap, straight for the queen. I moved without deciding. I grabbed the cloth-wrapped counter-agent from my tunic and flung it not at him but at the curtain cord above him. The cloth caught, yanked, and the curtain dropped like a falling wall, tangling him mid-lunge. He snarled an ugly human sound stripped of politeness and tore at the fabric. I shoved forward and slammed my shoulder into him. We hit the floor hard. His strength was shocking. He rolled, trying to pin me, fingers clawing for something at his belt, something thin and shining. A blade. I trapped his wrist with both hands. My arms trembled. He was stronger, trained. This was not my world, but I had one advantage: desperation. I bit his hand hard. He cursed and jerked, and I used the moment to slam his wrist against the stone. The blade clattered away. He headbutted me. Stars exploded behind my eyes. He yanked at his jaw seam, and the mask peeled partially, revealing a different face beneath, older, scarred, eyes like wet gravel. "Clerk," he spat as if the word itself disgusted him. "You don't belong in stories." "Neither do you," I wheezed and shoved my knee into his ribs. He grunted and then froze, because the hall had gone silent, not the polite silence of reverence. The shocked silence of witnessing something real. Hands seized the attacker from behind, guards finally arriving, dragging him off me. Another masked servant was pinned against the wall, fighting like a cornered animal, while the third was nowhere to be seen. I lay on the stone, chest heaving, blood in my mouth, hearing my own heartbeat louder than the chandeliers. Then a shadow fell across me. I looked up. The queen stood above me on the edge of the dais, crown glinting, her face a careful mask, yet her eyes were wide, bright with a fury I had never imagined. The hall watched her, waiting for her to speak. Instead, she stepped down from the throne. Every noble inhaled as one, scandalized. She crossed the distance and crouched beside me, ignoring the gasps, ignoring the etiquette cracking like thin ice. Her voice was low, meant only for me. "You're hurt." "I'm alive," I rasped. Her gaze flicked to the attacker being hauled away, mask half torn. "So am I." Then she looked back at me, and for one heartbeat the queen was simply a woman who had nearly been poisoned in front of her entire kingdom. "You were honest in a corridor," she whispered, "and it saved me." My throat tightened. "Said you were beautiful." Her mouth twitched despite everything. "Yes," she murmured, "and then you proved it meant nothing compared to your courage." She rose, turned to the hall, and her voice rang out clear as a bell. "Tonight," she announced, "we have learned something important." The nobles lined in, hungry. "The palace is not a place of safety," she said. "It is a place of vigilance, and the people who keep it standing are not always those who wear crowns." Her gaze swept over the servants lining the walls, over the clerks near the doors, over the guards who had arrived late but arrived nonetheless. Then she pointed, not at a duke, not at an envoy, at me, still on the stone, dazed and bleeding. "This one," she said, "spoke to me like a human being when he thought no one listened, and when danger came, he acted before he had permission to be brave." A murmur thundered through the hall. The queen lifted her chin. "In my reign," she declared, "truth will not be punished for lacking polish." Then quieter but still audible, "And anyone who seeks to poison their ruler will learn what it costs to underestimate the invisible." The guards dragged the attacker away. The banquet resumed uneasily, shakily, like a song restarted after a missed note, but everything had changed. Later, when the hall finally emptied and the candles burned low, I found myself in the same corridor where it had begun. The queen appeared beside me as if she belonged to shadows. "I should scold you," she said softly. "For biting a man?" I asked, throat sore. "For throwing a cup in my banquet hall," she replied. "I apologize," I said automatically. She studied me. "Do you?" I hesitated. "No." A quiet laugh escaped her, tired, genuine. "Good," she said. "Keep that." She reached into her sleeve and produced something new, a ribbon of dark cloth, plain, with a small silver pin shaped like a listening ear. "This," she said, "is not a reward, it is a responsibility." I stared. "Majesty, you said you wanted to remain alive," she reminded me. "So do I, and I need someone who hears what others miss." The corridor smelled of lemon oil and roses again, the same as before, but it no longer felt like a tunnel. It felt like a threshold. I took the pin. It warmed in my palm as if absorbing my pulse. The queen's eyes softened. "And for the record," she said, voice almost playful, "if you must be absent-minded, choose your mutters carefully." I exhaled a shaky laugh. "Yes, Majesty." She turned to go, then paused. "Next time," she added, "try saying it to my face." My mouth went dry. "Your Majesty is—" She lifted a hand, stopping me, her eyes bright with that same calm assessment as the first day. "No ropes," she said gently. "No practiced songs." Then she stepped away into the palace's quiet, leaving me standing with a pin in my hand and the strange, terrifying knowledge that invisibility could be turned into power if you were brave enough to use it. And as I watched her disappear, I realized something I hadn't understood when I muttered in that corridor. A careless compliment could embarrass you, but honest words spoken without performance could change where a story begins, and if you survived long enough, where it ends.